Macbeth. 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 Macbeth! Macbeth, directed by Justin Kurzel, starring Michael Fassbender, Marion Cotillard, David Thewlis, and Paddy Considine. I have been anxiously awaiting this movie. Not just because of the actors, not just because of the fact that it is a Shakespearean play, but it is based off my favourite Shakespearean play. Macbeth has always had some sort of power over me. Is it because of the characters? Is it because of the themes? Or just the fact that it's really, really bloody and I'm a bit of a sadist that way? I don't know. But I've always had a fascination with the Scottish play. Ever since I performed it, well, ever since I even bloody heard of it, I've just been really fascinated by it. And it's probably because of the fact that it somewhat defies the expectations of what a play is supposed to be. It doesn't have any up points, and well, towards the end I guess it does, but it's one of those things of which there is a sense of doom and gloom everywhere throughout the play. There's no sense of true hope, or goodness, or decency. This is a down and dirty sort of play. And I feel the only play that matches this is Titus Andronicus, but that is a review for another time. So that being said, when you are making a Shakespearean adaptation for the big screen, you have to play it smart. Like really, really smart. You have to make sure that you understand the words and you know how to frame it and you know how to capture the sense of the play. And you also have to make sure you get the right actors. And boy oh boy, does this version of Macbeth have the right, if not the best actors. I would like to start first with Marion Cotillard as Lady Macbeth herself. What a performance. You see, I've known a couple of people who said, well, I don't want to see this movie if it's not in a Scottish accent. Well, here's the thing. Even though it is not explicitly stated, and I will grant you that, Lady Macbeth may not necessarily be Scottish. I've always had the sensation that Lady Macbeth probably came from another country. Why do I feel like that? Well, back in those days, like back in those old days, marriages weren't necessarily made out of love. They were made for political alliances. You would have marriages between, like, say, a French prince or a Spanish princess, and you'd have them joined. And it's just to secure, like, relations between the countries. So in the sense of Lady Macbeth, you have a sense of otherness about her. You don't quite know who she is or where she comes from. You know she is devoted to her husband and she wants, both of them to gain power, but you don't get a true sense of who she is. Where does she come from? What does she truly want? And what's made her go down this path, right? So in the case of Marion Cotillard's performance, she has the French accent, but at the same time, she speaks the Shakespearean tongue like it were fluent. It's not just because of it's not down because of the accent, it is down to the intention. And with Lady Macbeth, she's just a very ambitious figure. She's also tremendously tragic, but it's simply because she brings this on herself. And when she finally realizes that she has gone way, way too deep, she starts to lose control. And Marion Cotillard's Lady Macbeth is one of the best. I would say that she's pretty much, you know what? I think she is better than Francesca Annis from Roman Polanski's Macbeth. Now that is saying something. This has no bearing against Annis's performance, but there's something so deep and intimate about Cotillard's Lady Macbeth that is really quite inspiring to watch. The fact that she had to work with her French accent and speak the Shakespearean words, that is something to be admired. And the fact that she captures the character. You get a sense that this Lady Macbeth may be like the fourth of the witches. She may be related to them, and even though it's not really stated as much, you get the sensation that she may not necessarily just be a woman. I like that. So bravo, Cotilard, bravo. Really, really good. So, Michael Fassbender as Macbeth. Oh, excuse me a moment. Oh yeah, that's good. Michael Fassbender as Macbeth is a beast in this movie. We all know that Michael Fassbender is a brilliant actor. He has proven it time and time again. One of my favourite of his performances was in Shame, and it's because of the fact that he gives a sense of vulnerability in that movie. You really do see him as a victim of his own affliction in that film. There's no sort of glorification of what he does. He does it because he feels a compulsion rather than an active desire. And you could somewhat translate that sort of mindset to Macbeth. Even though he wants power, when he gets that, he starts to become paranoid. He starts to become weak, and he can't afford to be weak. When Macbeth starts to play, he is a warrior. He is the epitome of man. And if you weren't a warrior, if you were a man in Scotland back in those days, and if you weren't a warrior, you were not a man. And Macbeth is always trying to prove himself as the man that he says he is. And he's just so obsessed with this. And this type of, idea he has about manhood and his own self-worth, it haunts him all throughout the movie, and you would not have seen that were it not for the fact that Fassbender is able to translate that into his performance. The way he moves, the way he speaks, the way he looks with those eyes of his. I am not seeing Michael Fassbender. I am seeing Macbeth. It's an astounding performance. And even though we can pretty much predict that he may not necessarily get an Oscar nomination for his role, because the way I figure it, Oscars are totally fucking rigged, if he got a nomination, and if he got a win, I would be so happy. Same thing can be said for Cotilard with her Lady Macbeth. Both of these performances complement each other so well. And it just translates into the characters. Lord and Lady Macbeth, they are a partnership. They're not man and woman. They are one. They are mutual. Macbeth does not see his wife as strictly property. He sees her as a partner in crime. Lady Macbeth sees Macbeth as not just a tool of power, but somebody who is dear to her. And as time goes on and the more crappier events become, they start to drift apart because it's just starting to eat them up inside. It's just so good. It's just beautiful performances, and everybody else in this movie is great. I loved David Thewlis as King Duncan. For what so little screen time he receives, it's David Thewlis. He's always going to rock it out, and everybody in this movie understands the concept of Shakespearean dialogue. We can say that Shakespearean dialogue is just so romanticized and is a staple of classical literature, but here's the thing. Shakespeare wrote for the common people. A lot of the plays that he composed and that were performed were for the people who lived on the streets, who went in, day out as hard labourers. These plays weren't necessarily for the nobility or anything like that. You see, when Shakespeare wrote his plays, he always mocked the royal family. But a reason why that is so it's kind of a reflection of the times. Even though the royal family around Shakespeare's time were kind of shitheads and everything, it's almost as if he wrote these other types of royals saying, yeah, our current nobility is kind of shitty, but they're not as shitty as the ones that came before them. It's kind of insidious and it's kind of insulting, but the fact of the matter is, Shakespeare was not a high-class writer. He wrote to shock, he wrote to titillate, and he wrote to entertain. And no matter how pretty his words seem, there's always a sense of dirtiness about him. Speaking about dirtiness, this whole movie is about mud. It's about grit and blood and guts, and it's just so Moorish in its approach. It's just so dark and gloomy. The moors of Scotland have never looked more dreary. It's just a beautifully photographed film. It's so well directed. Kurzel has a real handle on the dialogue. He knows how to direct his actors. He knows how to put them into blocking positions. Now, the only thing I really have against this movie is somewhat because of the pacing. For the most part, it is fine. But when you try to adapt a cinematic adaptation of a 500 or so year old play, you have to make sure that you keep the audience in mind. There's only a couple of situations in which this happens, like namely in the more dramatic moments. Yes, by all means, dwell upon the tragedy sinking in here, but you could have just cut down the time a little bit. This film moves by a pretty good pace, but when these things happen, they tend to stick out as like a sore toe. But the fact of the matter is, Macbeth 2015 is pretty frickin' good. Better than good. It's pretty great. It's pretty great because of everybody involved. This is a very assured film. It has incredibly confident performances, gorgeous set designs, fantastic costumes, and it just has a true handle on what the world of Macbeth is all about. It's just so wonderful to see. And even though Polanski's Macbeth and Akira Kurosawa's Throne of Blood, those are both completely respectable in their own spheres, but this Macbeth probably is my favourite Macbeth. It's just got the perfect combination of brutality and elegance. So good. It really is one of my favourites of 2015, bar none. And yeah, we know 2015 isn't quite done yet, but if I were a list-making person, and I'm not saying I do because I don't make lists, this would be on there. This could easily be in my top 5. For the love of God, see it. If you don't know what Macbeth is, well, 1, did you go to high school? And 2, just please read the play. Please, please, please. I sincerely doubt that you will hate it. Yeah, see this movie, guys. See this film and see Shakespeare being done so goddamn well. So that being said, I shall see you in the next review, and thank you once again for listening to me ramble. Bye-bye for now. Macbeth! Sorry, I had to say that. Bye-bye.